Welcome to the Craig and Greg Show, presented by Maximize Leadership. Now, here are Craig Owens and Greg Harris.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Craig and Greg Show. I'm Craig, sitting alongside Greg, who has a brand new book out. So make sure, if you are in the sales world, you are going to want to pick up a copy of Sales Armageddon. You can go to MaximizeLeadership.com and we'll direct you to the places where you can pick up a copy of this outstanding book. Well, John.
Thank you very much.
I not too long ago was hanging out with some young kids, and I was very young, middle school age, and I'm sharing something with them, and they kind of rolled their eyes and went, "Okay, boomer."
They did not say that.
Yes. Now,
boomer?
Technically, I'm not.
No, you're not.
I'm slightly past it. You are.
I made it by 1 year.
Yeah. See,
and I'm hanging around really good people.
I know.
Methuselah and Moses are in my group.
It's true. But, you know, it is, I think that there's some people that have, based on the age groups that the people are in, they will have misconceptions about them, and that may be a different topic. But what we'd like to talk to you about today is, as leaders, I think most leaders know this, there's not just a one-size-fits-all for communication. You can't just say one thing one way and expect that everybody on your team is going to get it. You realize that there's some people that you have to speak to. I need to say it a little differently so that you get it. But I think specifically, if you are leading a team that has multi-generations in it, you need to be aware of how they're wired, what motivates them, how their ears are hearing certain things, and how their ears and brains are maybe processing something a little bit differently than you, if you're in a different generational group from them. Now, we did talk about, in a previous episode, we talked about trust. Yeah. And I think trust is important too. That's going to go a long way towards bridging some of the communication gaps or deficiencies sometimes that take place. But let's assume, for the sake of our conversation today, that our leaders have excellent levels of trust with across the board with their teammates. Okay.
We have to assume that?
Yes, we're going to assume that. And then we're going to help them with tweaking it a little bit. So let's start with one of the older generations, the older generations.
Boy, oh boy.
Oh,
you
man.
can cut the mic right now on him. Oh my goodness.
I'm going to, excuse me, I got to take a nap.
Exactly.
And then drink my prune juice.
Did you take your Metamucil this morning? I took my Mountain Dew.
All right.
Exactly.
Let's talk about boomers first. So these are the older ones.
Speak up a little bit because they're older.
So a lot of boomers are going to be in that age where they may have already retired, but there's a lot of boomers that are going to go right past the 65, and they're enjoying working. I think that the boomer generation, they did a pretty good job taking care of themselves health-wise, and so they're in pretty good shape, and they would like to keep on working. But what's been your experience? What are some of the hot button things or the key takeaways for people that are talking with boomers that are on their team?
So obviously there's a generation above it called the traditionals, and they're pretty much out of the workforce. They're still around maybe, but so each generation, I have found, when I did some studies, and I actually did a paper at my MBA about the gaps, the differences in generations, and it's pretty stark. You take a boomer to an X, they're not opposite, but they're the other side of the coin.
Sure.
And then you have the Ys. They kind of got a little ignored, maybe, if you look at the sociology of it all. And then the Zs have kind of replicated the boomers. And it kind of does this, right? It kind of comes around full circle. I think that one of the things that's very interesting for boomers is their optimism. I would say the Xers are more skeptical.
Sure.
And that's not about trust. That's just maybe, I'm going to question it. Authority for the boomer is, you were taught that, like the military, the police, your teacher, your
calling
pastor,
people Mr. and Mrs.
You would never say, "Hey, Greg." It would be Mr. Harris.
Right.
And the Xers went right to, let's be casual. They went to Levi Dockers, the relaxed pants, and they kind of got rid of the suits and dresses at work.
Well, so exactly. Like, let's talk. You and I, back in the day, we wore suits.
I loved it.
To work every day.
Every day.
Right.
Yeah. And you were a very dapper dresser, and we did some shopping.
Because I was trying to keep up with you.
Well, that didn't take much as long as you brushed your teeth. But when we would go on shopping trips,
Yep.
go to Detroit or
Yep.
go someplace and just pick out some cool outfits, and many of the gifts, like we just generous with each other. Like, here's a cool set of cufflinks that go with that. Oh, they do.
Yeah. Yep.
I think there is more of a relaxed difference between the boomers and the Xers.
Yep.
So the boomers aren't uber proper, but they dress for success.
So let's talk about this then. If something that a boomer has to guard against is if they're talking with somebody in Gen X, and that person calls me Craig instead of Mr. Owens, I might want to go, oh, you're not showing me, you're disrespecting me by doing that.
They would, yeah.
But
right.
that's what I might think, but that's not necessarily the case. Same thing with the clothes. Oh, you're overdressing. Oh, you're underdressing.
Right.
No, not necessarily. Yeah. They're not disrespecting. Yeah. So that's why you have to understand where their mindset is.
I think another highlight of boomers is they really love that their generation was a strong work ethic. Mm-hmm. Put in the time. I think another generation down the list would be like, I like the front parking spot. You just started working here, and you would never get that from a boomer. Like, well, you got to wait for that one,
right?
And so there's a little bit of patience that I think the boomers have. Financial security is a real big thing for them. Like, they planned and organized, and I think the next generations are a little more laissez-faire. And yeah, if I save enough money, I'll go on vacation. No, the boomers, they saved money in one account.
Right.
I mean, they were specific. Like,
then they went on vacation. They didn't go on vacation and put it on the credit card and pay it off
back
later.
Yeah.
Right.
And some don't even pay it back, obviously.
Right.
But there's some generations. But yeah, I think the boomers probably took work real big in their life.
Mm-hmm. Like taking it home with them big.
Yeah, maybe a little workaholic potentially. Yep.
Sure.
Like I can think of one of my dear partners. I just love the guy. He would go home and he'd leave the office at after 5. And that's another generation goes at 5. Like, they leave right at 5. Then they're done. They quit at 1:45. And
sure.
But he had a folder under his arm. You're like, are you really going to get through all that at night? Sure enough. The balance going into the Xers is they really want that work-life balance,
sure.
Whereas boomers probably were maybe a little, out of balance. I don't mean to be mean about it, but the boomers probably, if you worked hard, you got promoted.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe the Xers will say, promote me based on what I can contribute.
Right.
Not the hours I work.
Right. Not what I've already put in, but what I'm going to put in.
Yeah. So the Xers kind of followed a little different. So I didn't say it was the opposite, but it's another side of the coin.
Sure.
It's not a wrong coin. It's just they're just wired different. And I think for many, if you could ask them, so Xer would be 44 to 59, roughly somewhere in there. They probably saw their parents, boomers, maybe miss, your little league game or your sister's, gymnastics competition, because work was pretty valuable.
Right.
I think one of the things that is very odd now is you hear somebody, I've been at this company 43 years. Wow. So if it's a boomer, that's an automatic. An Xer, you maybe worked for 45 years, but probably had 9 jobs.
Yes.
And that's, they like the change, or they didn't want to get stuck.
Yep.
I think that's always an interesting one. Like, I need something new.
Right.
I don't think boomers ever thought of that as new.
Well, and again, that you got to be careful if you are a baby boomer and you see somebody's resume, you look at their resume and they've got a lot of jobs, your natural tendency is going to say, well, they're flighty.
They're uncommitted.
Right. And if you're a Gen Xer and you look at a boomer's resume and you go, you've been at one job for 43 years. Well, you just don't want to take any risks. You're boring. That's not
You're inflexible.
Right. So you need to understand this is what we're talking about here, is that just understand where they're coming from. Don't use these as labels. Use them as windows of insight into the way that the other people are wired and what they're thinking about.
I think, for boomers, potentially an Xer or a Y or a Z would maybe say we were wasteful. We bought a lot of stuff, We collected toys. The person that dies with the most toys wins. That was the boomers sticker. That wasn't anybody else's. I think, like for Xers, I do really think it's important that they're socially responsible. They'll take up a cause and maybe not buy the Mastercraft or the new, Denali. They're going to do something in the community that needs to be done, whether it's Pause with a Cause or maybe a veterans cause. They're socially responsible, and that instead of like work ethic focused, it's socially focused.
Yep.
For the Xers, I think they're loyal to a brand, whereas I think boomers were loyal to a person. So Xer might be like, I'm really loyal to Nike, or I'm really loyal to Ford, and because they believed that company's brand. Mm-hmm. Boomers were more about the person. Many would move if you were the CEO and I was the COO, and you got a job offer. You would take me with you.
Yes.
Yep. So that's people loyal.
Yep.
Whereas maybe the Xer might see you leave, and then everybody wants that job, right? So and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just I think
a different way. Right.
You would take me with you to the next gig. Xers wouldn't leave.
Right.
They would look forward to the next CEO and see what that's going to be like.
Which is why the boomers would be so loyal to a person, because they know that if I'm going to make you look good, and when you go to the next level, you're taking me with you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think of a company like Foremost, it's a local business insurance company in Grand Rapids. And the guy that started it was a very entrepreneur, but he wasn't good at running it. He brought in a CPA who was very good with the metrics and measurement and math and made sure the system was efficient. But he brought, I think you know the guy Bob Woodstra? Mm-hmm. So Bob took over when Dick Antonini retired, but he took Bob along.
Yep.
I mean, Bob was there the whole time. He didn't have another job, and then Farmers bought it, and so he stayed with Farmers. It's the loyalty of a boomer. The experiences often are for the Xers.
Sure.
They work hard and they want to take their Subaru and their kayaks and go to a river.
Yep.
The boomer would work overtime, even if he wasn't paid.
Yep.
So I think the value stability of a boomer is different with the Xers. They're more risk takers. They're more, I want a new experience, like you said, multiple jobs.
Sure.
The Ys, I think, not like Y, but the Generation Y, they're kind of in that pickle. They're very tech savvy, maybe where the boomers shine because they're loyal to a person. The next generation, X and particularly Y, are more loyal to social media. Equipment.
Well, a lot of people have referred to Generation Y as Generation IY, the lowercase I, Y,
right.
because they kind of came on the scene at the same time that a lot of that technology did. Yeah. And the portable technology. The Gen X, they got a lot of stuff on their computer. That's where, the internet was really hitting its stride. Yeah. But now that you can have it portable in your hand and have, this instant stuff, then they were like parents, were like, here, you have a tablet in your hand almost before you can do anything else.
I think we're the learning styles of the people you're kind of hitting on that pretty cool, Craig, is so a boomer was observation, maybe a book. World Book Encyclopedia. Go look it up. I hated that when my mom said that. But the Xers, they had that stationary laptop. They had it, but then when they left, they had work-life balance.
Yes.
Right. The Ys, it followed them.
Yep.
And I think that's a different work ethic. It's a different concentration. It's a different learning. So they might take half a day off, and because they can take their portable equipment, and the Y can do it at night and no one knows.
Right.
So pay me for my contribution, not because my butt's in the seat at the office.
Right. They're getting the work done.
They are.
But it's just not from the traditional 9 to 5 in the office.
And they want that flexibility, and they want to go take their dog for a walk, and they want to go to a coffee shop, but they're portable, but they may not be giving you the 8 hours that a bank would be traditionally open 9 to 5.
Yep.
I think that for the Ys, they've had to kind of react to what the Xers didn't copy of the boomers. And I'm not trying to put the boomers on the top; they're just the older ones. I think for the Ys, unfortunately, social experiences, social consciousness, they have so much accessible on their portable. It gets them. Whereas a boomer had to read a book.
Yep.
Dale Carnegie or somebody else. It's just not Napoleon. Different authors that they would carry that book around, like how to influence people.
Right.
Whereas the Ys are, what does the phone say?
Yeah, and I think that with that, what they're doing is more of like, so you're mentioning some, I read this author, I read this author.
Right.
The Generation Y is not going to be so much reading an author; they're going to be reading a Reddit, and that is a compilation of a bunch of things. And so we say, well, where did you come up with that idea? They're not going to say, well, this is what Dale Carnegie said, or this is what
true.
They're going to say, well, they won't give you a specific name to a person, but they will accurately give you a synopsis of this is the synthesis of all of this thing that's going on. And so I think it became that Generation Y especially became one of the best informed groups. Yeah. But I like Tim Elmore writes a lot about generations, and he wrote a book specifically about Generation Y that he called it Artificial Maturity, because they had so much head knowledge that makes them sound like they're smart, but they had no, how do I apply this?
Practice.
How do I live this out? So it looks like they're mature, but when the rubber meets the road, when the situation is right there in front of them, IRL, in real life, they didn't know how to apply it.
Yeah. I think when boomers were in the workforce, mentorship was really common.
Sure.
Just follow me around, you'll figure it out. You did. You followed the person around because he said to.
Right.
Xers wanted to work alone. They kind of weren't as big collaborators.
Right.
I think Y is. I
Yes.
think Ys are collaborators.
Absolutely. Yep.
Like, not being mean about the subject, but you could take a video game and you could take a bunch of Ys and they all will play their game against each other. One's in Texas, one's in Florida, one's in Michigan, one's in Colorado. That is their connectivity. That's their collaboration. That's their team, whether it's work or fun. Where the Xers were more on their own, didn't want to kind of join that 9-to-5, bureaucracy,
Sure.
And that's okay.
Yep.
I think what's hard for all of us leaders is what we liked. Sort of, you're in the education business as well as a church. So is your wife in the education business. Teachers teach often their style of learning.
Right.
We lead thinking that's what they want.
Yep.
And we really have to take our hat off and go, okay, where are they? I know them enough. Another reason for us to, get to know our people.
Right.
So if you're in leadership, you got to know kind of, are they in the, X or Y or IY or part of Z or what is it? Because you have to really, to be a leader of these generations, and it's interesting how they break it down. It's about 15 years, 16 years. That's not even an adult cycle. You could have a baby at 25, right. You have a 1-year-old. So somehow we've got to catch up to what are the other generations looking for, what motivates them, what do they value, what would be smothering, which I think is a big one. Sure. I want you to be here and just watch me. And the person's like,
right. Well, and it's right. And it's, again, it's not, I want you to do it my way. And it's not, it's going to feel a little awkward when you're communicating to somebody outside of your generational set, but that's okay. It's still the fact that you're trying and that you say you need to get that honest feedback from the other person. They're like, I don't get it. I don't understand what you're saying to me. Okay, well, help me. Teach me then. Right. How do I communicate Z? How do I communicate Y? Help me out with that, or how to communicate boomer in a way that you're going to get it.
I'll say this well for the HR leaders, the talent acquisition, talent development, that industry, that piece of your company. They have the hardest job because they know what the position requires. They also know who the supervisor is, and they're thinking that's not going to work. And it's very tough for that particular level of leadership in HR. You're really struggling with, okay, so she's a bulldog, and he's kind of soft. That's probably not. I'm just using words, but that's not probably going to work too good. He's not going to excel there. Yep. How's that? I think with the Ys, they're learners. Boomers were observers. I won't skip, X and Z for this, but the Ys are learners. Speaking of your, artificial maturity, they got it right here. They know, they can say it. They don't know how to maybe apply it or how it works, right? Because they haven't had the at-bats. But I think what's fascinating, so you kind of go from a Y to a Z, and they almost look like boomers.
Right.
So they're entrepreneurs. They don't want to work for big companies as much. They don't want hierarchy or bureaucracy. They want to be. Can I talk to the president? I mean, they want to get to that level. They're not entitled. I think maybe the previous ones were a little maybe entitled, the boomer had to earn it, and maybe the Y is, so I want that front parking spot because, it's less steps. Oh, good. But I think for Zs, they're maybe bringing back a little bit of entrepreneur spirit. They can kind of, they're comfortable with change, maybe.
Oh, sure. Definitely.
They're adapting. Yep. And, but I think it's important, unfortunately, for all of them to work together. I really get back to one of our podcasts before was like respect. I think we've had different, terminologies in it, but I think it's the lesson in leadership regarding the multiple generations is respect. They had different experiences. Some of us had, a TV with rabbit ears and, you had 3 stations, and if the president was on, you're done.
Right. That's all that was on. Right.
So then you went to your grandpa's house and listened to, Tigers on the radio. But I think with the tech stuff, each one from boomers to I don't even know how to change more oil in my car because it's all computer, to the Zs. I mean, look at this little cute stories of kids on an iPad. They're trying to turn the page on an iPad. I mean, the ability these kids have as they grow up with tech, nothing scares them. Right. My mom and dad were afraid to touch a button on the phone when we first got them their first cell phone. Well, I don't want to screw it up. Well, so you call the wrong person, big deal,
Right.
But I think with the Zs, they're so fluent in digital.
Yep.
They make it look effortless.
Yeah.
And then put them on those committees, put them on those projects. They're so efficient. And the boomer might well, I'd like to know how you did that. No, you don't.
Right.
They're so good at it.
Right.
It's so fun how God made each generation and different. You got genders and depending on if it was a professional family or a manual family or an education family or maybe politics or it's kind of fun to watch what they bring.
Absolutely.
To the table. When you look at the 4 generations, boomer, X, Y, Z, what jumps out to you that you've had leadership opportunities and you're like, whew, I learned from that one.
Yeah. Well, that is the big thing. I think that I had to have the learner's mentality going in there. When I started my first couple jobs, the people that I was working with were all in the same generation with me. Then I was a couple of jobs in before I started. Oh, I've got some people that are significantly older. I've got some people that are significantly younger. And I had to realize I can learn something from them. I can't come in with my way is the best way.
Right.
And my style of communication is what everybody else should be on.
Right.
I had to be able to learn from them. And like I mentioned this earlier, if you truly have that humble mindset, that mentality, when you come in there, I really want to communicate with you, and so help me know, how I can best share this with you. People will be willing to extend that to you.
Yeah.
But it's when you come in and go, this is the way we're doing it, and they're like, we don't do it like that. Well, tough. This is the way we're doing it. Mm-hmm. Then you close that off, and nobody's learning anything at that point.
I think 2 things just to wrap up on the Zs. One is they really focus on diversity, but not what we think. So someone comes in with tattoos, well, that's diverse. Someone comes in with different hair color, that's diverse. Someone doesn't have the same religion beliefs, that's diverse. And where I think boomers really were like, well, you only want to hire that kind because they get along with us. It was a little bit of a in a box. And I think Z's really went to, there's no box, there's no walls.
Right.
It's inclusion, it's diversity. The interesting part, I think, if you go to the top of the age, boomers, they found coping mechanisms because of their maybe out of balance work ethic, but it was striving for security and, gain
Sure.
and so forth. When you drop down to the Z's, they're more prone for anxiety. And anxiety often comes from the, technology, because you got so much information, you're so young, and you're getting these
You don't know what to do with it. Right.
images and information. You're like, woo. And so they're drawn into it, whereas the boomers are like, why would I search the news? I just read the newspaper. And, a Z was like, newspaper? What's that for? Or do we even have them?
Right.
I think the anxiety is probably something of concern. If you're in a leadership role and you have some Z's, it's kind of gotten more anxious, more uptight.
Sure.
They struggle with it because it's just constant. There's no downtime.
Yep.
Where a boomer could go home and take their dog on a walk,
Yep.
unplug, and they walk in the yard and cut the grass. And now the Z's, they have an apartment or a condo and they don't cut the grass and they go inside and more information off their phone. So I think knowing that, helping a Z, maybe even a Y, be a part of people groups versus, hey, research this for me.
Sure.
I think that will help them emotionally, mentally. Like, it's okay to, get this done when you want, but we need it tomorrow.
Sure.
I think that's the hard part. But I think it's a great privilege to have these generations, and you've done fabulous, whether it's, your own organization that you built or ones that you jumped in and, kind of parachuted in and had to be a pretty good level leader right away. You learn a lot about people if you're curious.
Yep.
Versus do it my way.
Right. And this is where coaching helps. Again, like you said, parachuting in, that's kind of coaches come in from outside the organization. And one of the places that we can certainly help you is if you have multi-generations in your organization, we can observe and say, here's where you're connecting, here's where you're missing the mark, and suggest strategies that would help you communicate better. So go to maximizeleadership.com, click on the coaching tab. Down there at the bottom of that page, you'll see some of our coaches on there, but at the bottom of the page, you can fill in the form. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're looking for. We'll look at that, and we'll get you set up with a coach that can help you. That's what we want to help you do, is to be able to lead at that higher level. That's what we do in these episodes for the Craig and Greg Show. If you haven't already, would you subscribe on the YouTube channel and click that bell so you're notified? We not only have the full-length episodes, we have some short episodes. Greg has some max minutes. You'll find out about other great resources like books and that sort of thing that would be available for you as well. We'd also like to get some feedback from you. So maybe you want to comment below on this video, or on X, you can reach out to us at Maximize Podcast. Give us some feedback on this episode. Maybe suggest some upcoming topics that you'd like us to cover. We just want to resource you so that you can grow your leadership, because when you get better, everyone around you is going to get better as well. Stay tuned. Lots more great content coming your way real soon.
Get in touch with Craig and Greg through Twitter at Maximize Podcast or at MaximizeLeadership.com. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any episodes of The Craig and Greg Show.